my great pleasure to welcome Gadi Hareli. Gadi, you are the CEO of the Israel Wind Energy Association, an organization which is also a member of the World Wind Energy Association. You also served on our board. You're still on the board of the World Wind Energy Association. And we look forward to hearing from you about the latest developments of wind power in Israel. Gadi.
Thank you, Stefan, for the kind words. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Okay, so I'll have this 10 minutes describe what's going on here in Israel. I'm also actively involved with the Ministry of Energy here, working with them. And you can see here on the first slide some of the installations currently available, wind, solar, different types of CSPs, concentrated solar power plants, and so on. So Israel, unlike Russia, is a tiny country, shrinking by the minute. It has a peak demand of 13.8 gigawatts with an installed capacity of 17 gigawatts for electricity generation. The IEC, which is the Israeli electric company, is practically used to be the sole and the only organization in charge of both production, transmission, and distribution. Its current capacity is 11.6 gigawatts with 15 power stations. The regulatory framework, which is changing with time, is splitting the mandate of the IEC, so they are now not producing, cannot produce renewables, and also the management of the system, the electric grid, is also going to be extracted out of their hands, so they will be in charge of transmission and distribution only. The yearly power consumption of the country, electricity consumption, is standing at roughly 70 terawatt-hour per year. I mentioned the electricity market reform, which is going now, and we are having different projects of attempting different mechanisms for resolving the different issues, some of which relate to renewable energy as well. All the topics of peak shaving and pickers for generation and aggregation of consumers to stabilize the electrical grid. So a lot of interesting research projects which are taking place related to the electricity grid, as well as developments of technologies, some of which we may touch a bit later if we have the time. And which relate directly to the integration of renewable energy generation into the grid. So we'll see about that later. Currently, what we have at this stage, we have 7% of the production in the country coming from renewable. Most of that is originating from solar, out of which most of it is photovoltaics. We have 65% coming from natural gas and 28%, roughly 28 coming from coal, which is to be to fade out by 2026. We had the target of reaching 10% by we didn't get to this target. As you see, we are only currently at 7% of renewable energy. We expect to reach the 10% goal this year. But in any case, the new target for 2030 is 30% of renewable energy. You can see here some graphs which I didn't have the time to translate into English, but this one is showing the energy. So this is terawatt hours from renewables by the end of 2019, and this is the installed capacity of renewables totaling 2.3 gigawatts by the end of 2019. As you can see here, most of it is originating from photovoltaics, 77%. Then there is a CSP installation, followed by biogas, hydro, biomass, and only 1% coming from wind at the end of 2019. Here at the bottom, you can see a graph of the plans of the reduction according to the plans. But we can skip that. Okay, so since most of the installations are coming from photovoltaics, this is a graph showing the progress done in the Israeli PV installations, including 2020. So we are currently at the stage in which we have roughly 2.5 gigawatts of photovoltaics installed capacity. And since we are not Russia, so Israel with a limited land availability, a pretty big share of the installations are rooftop installations. So 1 gigawatt of the 2.5 gigawatts are rooftop installations. And most of the ground installations are in the southern part of Israel in the desert. On top of that, there are also these CSP power plants, which are originally Israeli technologies, and that is probably the reason they got the permit and the push forward to do the installation. But as you well know, probably, these technologies find it hard to compete with the classical photovoltaic panels. Next, we go to wind farms in Israel. So I heard in previous lectures that they talked about installed capacity, not necessarily grid-connected capacity. So, so we have this wind farm in Emek HaBacha, in the northern part of Israel, over here. And another one in the northern part of Israel, Bereshit wind farm. You can see here some already operational grid-connected wind farms in Sirin and Gilboa. By the way, next to it, this over here, large water reservoir is a 300 megawatt pumped storage installation for peak shaving. We have 3 such hydroelectric power plants for energy storage. Going directly into the installed capacity and what are the projects specifically. So we have a very old wind farm, Mei Golan, in the location of Tel Hassania, with a 6 megawatts of very old turbines, Austrian brand, 10 such turbines of 600 kilowatts. There are a few 200 kilowatts installations as well from the early, in the region of 1993. Then we have in 2016, when we had the World Wind Energy Conference here in Jerusalem, I was expecting these wind farms to get grid connected by 2015, they were already installed, but didn't get the permit for the connection, or were not connected yet. Nowadays, they are fully operational. Both are owned by the company named Afcon, one in Ma'ale Gilboa and one in Sirin, 11.9, 935, 14 plus 11 turbines. The brand, these are Gamesa turbines. And the reason that they installed in 2016 only 850 kilowatt machines is the fact that the permit was for a certain height and a specific turbine, and they didn't want to take the chance or the risk of attempting to modify the permit. So that is the reason why they kept these types of turbines. A production line had to be revived in order to provide these turbines in 2016. And now we are actually coming to the new era. And the first wind farm is a 109 megawatt wind farm of 34 wind turbines, each of 3.2 megawatt, which is already there. They are already doing tests for the connection, and it's expected to be completely grid connected and operational in a month or two. So that can certainly be considered as an existing and working project. Enlight, as you can see here, has some more projects down the road. Then there is the company named Energix, again in the Golan, with a capacity of 110 megawatts, with 31 turbines of 3.6 megawatt each, which should be grid connected next year. Maybe the order is not exact here. The reason I put it down here is because with these two developers I didn't have the chance of speaking with, so I was not sure about the estimated connection dates. So my assumption is it would be 22, 23. Another two projects from Enlight. This is so far the biggest one. You saw some pictures from the construction of the foundations of these turbines. So 39 turbines. I'm not sure, they are not sure yet which vendor and which type of turbine would be used. So I simply put an average number over here. By the way, most of them with whom I talk, seems like GE would be a favorable vendor here, but there are discussions with other vendors as well. So this is the Bereshit, which is also in the northern part of the country. Then another project of Enlight of 40 megawatts is planned to be in the region of roughly Beersheba, the southern part of Israel. Yatir, that's close to a forest, which is stopping the penetration of the desert to prevent desertification. So that's another interesting story about sustainability, but we are in wind energy topics now. EDF has a branch in Israel, EDF Israel, who has been working on few projects. Seems like 2 or 3 are going to mature, totaling in the range of 80 megawatts, with 16 turbines expected to be connected next year or in 2023. And the last, perhaps significant one is Zodiac in the Galil region with a power of 32 megawatts. All these installations are based on a given feed-in tariff thing, which is allocated for 730 megawatts. So we have the permits, I would say, assumed permits for nearly 600 of the 730 available megawatts. This is the feed-in tariff is for 20 years and roughly in the range of 10 US cents per kilowatt hour, obviously. Now, from part of my activity relates to address things which don't or stop the progress of installations of renewables. So from my discussions with the different developers, I'm not sure how it is in your countries, but roughly 50% of the developed wind farms do not get the permit for different reasons, be it noise, shadow, flicker, birds, mortality, etc. Out of the 50% which do continue on working for the permits, roughly, and even if they do get a permit, roughly 60 to 70% of the turbines are disqualified for the same reasons. So this is basically my evaluation of the statistics from what I hear and see locally. So now there are trends in Israel. We're working on different things. Currently, there is a work I was participating in looking into the possibility of doing offshore installations in Israel with current plans for the offshore usage. There is currently a big bid related to dual use of land due to the size of the country. So land usage is, the dual use is vital. So we have different activities relating to floating PV, agro-integrated PV, and many projects of integrated storage. By the way, I heard someone else speaking about that. So there is a project I'm involved in which supports transformation, mobile transformation of storage between sites. So you have the wind farm in one location, you charge these cabins and then you move them to the connection point. So a lot of activities, different activities, currently very low in the total amount and in the percentage. And that's about it. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gadi, for giving us a very good idea of where Israel stands in terms of renewable energy, in particular wind power. And it's good to see that there are some major wind farms obviously under construction now. So we can expect some more wind farms getting online in the next 1-2 years. That is, of course, very encouraging. We have a question here from Ulrich Hogenhaven. I assume that's our colleague from a small wind manufacturer, Viking Wind. What are the latest regulations for small wind in Israel?
Okay. So small wind, there is an allocation of, if I recall correctly, 20 megawatts for small wind with a pretty good feed-in tariff. I've been trying and attempting to make it financially viable, but with given all the constraints and the need to connect to the grid, where there is no connection or not no installation of existing photovoltaics, for example, it was pretty difficult. There were many attempts by many developers, but none of them really matured. I mean, I had some installations of a turbine here, turbine there, but nothing significant, despite the attractive feed-in tariff. Sorry.
Then what is the main barrier?
First of all, regulatory-wise, once you are talking about more than 50 kilowatt, that is considered similar to large size wind turbines. Some of the developers which were shown on the slides started with small wind turbines, but the expenses of millions of dollars in the process of development and the years that it takes, it doesn't cover the expenses of the development itself, let alone so that is the main reason. So either you had the financial backup to go for a large wind, otherwise you would have to go through nearly all the bureaucracy, unless you're talking about 15 kilowatt, that's kind of a barrier, and not more than 9 turbines. So the sizing limitation and the amount of efforts, the regulatory efforts you have to go through, that's made it roughly no-go.
So it's for really small turbines in the kilowatt range, you would still have a big bureaucratic effort.
No, for example, there is a certain limit up to which, let's say up to 4 meters. For example, if you have, you have to go into the details. So very, very tiny wind turbines shouldn't be much of a problem. But then the maintenance of very small wind turbines and the amount of income you make out of it, it's next to the ground, so the wind speed would not be that attractive and the whole financials wouldn't make sense.
Well, Gadi, I assume that is a little bit beyond the main topic of this meeting here. And of course, we also have webinars dedicated for small wind. Maybe we can also have one where you also present that a bit more in depth, because I think now having that discussion for small wind is certainly worthwhile. But as we are now coming to the end of the first part of our world market development overview, I would say thank you for now, and there's no more question here. So a great thank you to Israel, and we hope to hear more good news from you in the near future about the next wind farm that's going to be grid connected. Yeah, then let me say thank you again to all the speakers. I think we had really some very good news from some countries. We had, I think, we heard positive developments from everywhere.